how many people you're impacting. You know, like I never ever take it for granted that what I write or what I say really goes any further than me most of the time. So it is really nice when you get messages from people saying, "Oh, I saw your work," or "I read your book," um, and you realize that, oh, there is this kind of like ripple effect that you're having,
Oh,
albeit
that's
still very
beautiful.
small, but it's really nice. So thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Oh, well, we're so happy you can be here today. I am going to do a little intro.
Hmm.
So, for our guests, welcome to the Fresh and Fired Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Marshall, here to help you function at your best in health, fitness, and life. Joined by my co-host, the wild and wonderful Haley Pindle. Hey,
Hey,
Haley, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Do you want to know why I'm doing fantastic?
Why?
Because Justin is my boyfriend. He has just told me where we're going on our little trip
Where are you
tomorrow.
going?
We're going to, okay, backstory. I have a very unhealthy obsession with Twilight, and I have for years. And so we're going to Forks, Washington, where he's
Oh,
going to propose to me, and it's going to be amazing.
that's so exciting. I love that you know. It's great.
Oh, yes, I
So,
know.
so Haley is fired up today. Let's get
I'm
fired
so
up.
fired up. You best believe
Yeah.
I'm gonna be on Google, like thinking and searching all the places he could be doing it potentially.
I'm so pumped for you and we can't wait to hear all about it after.
Oh
But
yeah.
for today, we have a very special guest on. So her name is Renee Mcgregor. She is the leading sports and dietitian. So you are, sorry, I'm going to say sports dietitian. You can correct me with your title if I'm wrong on that, but from what I've read on you, you have 20 years of experience or more. You can, again, correct me on any details. Working with Olympic, Paralympic, and Commonwealth athletes. She is renowned in her expertise in the area of REDs, eating disorders, and female athlete health. And I'm really excited to hear like your unique, compassionate perspective and your lens of performance, recovery, and well-being for the athletes that you work with, as well as any other clients that you can let us know about. Yeah, but you're also the author of several books, and your latest, Fuel for Thought, which I would love to hear more about that as well, about the different strategies and mindset and all the tools that you're offering in your book. And yeah, so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really really nice to be here and to meet you both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love to, you can give us some of your backstory just to get us going, and then we have some good questions for you. Well, I think they're good
Cool,
questions.
cool. Um, Oh, I don't like talking about myself very much. It's always quite like a bit of like, oh, I like being the person behind the book. So yeah, okay. So I'm a sports dietitian, but actually probably I suppose probably a more accurate title for me would be a sports exercise and medicine dietitian because I worked in the clinical world for 10 years before I became a sports dietitian. I have a very um, clinical focused background, but I like to bridge the gap between sport and clinical because I think it's often missed and we often forget that athletes are not just commodities, they are human beings. They need care, they need to be nurtured, they need to understand nourishment. And I guess that's the unique slant I bring to the world of nutrition. I think um, there aren't that many practitioners, and definitely not that many nutrition practitioners working in sport that I think advocate for athletes the way in which I advocate for them. And sometimes it's got me in trouble. I'm not going to lie, but I'm all right with that. I'm quite comfortable with being a troublemaker if it means somebody else benefits. So, um, yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, like I said, I've worked across both clinical and performance. I've been at the top end, working with these very elite level athletes. And then in 2017, I decided to create my own consultancy where athletes could come to me. So, generally in sport, you can only work with someone if they're allocated to your sport. And I suppose what I wanted was to create something where people could just come and find me. I was accessible to anybody, whatever level of athlete they were, whether that was grassroots or recreational or junior or Olympic, Paralympic, whatever. And you know what? Everybody comes to me. So it's really interesting. Like no two people I work with are the same, and no 2 days are the same. I'll be honest, it feels like today has just been a day of recording podcasts, which is quite unusual, but it's been fun. It's like a whole different world to my career, but it's been fun. So yeah, I like the kind of variety in what I do.
Yeah, I love that. And like for your sport, I'm sure like it's running is what I'm kind of gathering, but what kind of gave you that spark and that passion to be like, you know what, I'm going to be the advocate for this very large gap that I definitely relate to in the area of sport and athletes?
It's a really good question. What made me do this? Sorry, my hair is really, really sort of like slippery. I don't really know what to do about it, so my headphones keep slipping off. So I really apologise for that slight.
You need some more volume, like me.
I
and
need
just,
some
like,
more
nest it
volume.
in there.
Exactly. I need some more volume. In fact, I've got this like really slippery, shiny hair that I can't do anything about. Sorry, that was a slight digression there.
It's okay. Our YouTube subscribers will enjoy that.
So yeah, I guess it's a really good question. I'm trying to think. I suppose I really care about people, right? Like I'm a very deep empath, which I guess goes with the territory when you work in the health service in particular. And I am a highly sensitive individual. So although it's taken me a very long time to understand what that means, and it's taken me a long time to appreciate how that can be my superpower as well as my Achilles heel. I can see now, like what that means is that I experience other people's suffering quite intensely. I don't like suffering. I don't like. I find it very painful watching people struggle. And I guess some of that comes from very difficult early experiences in terms of I come from my parents are both first generation immigrants from India, so obviously I was born in the UK, but they are first generation immigrants, and it was complicated growing up in the 80s and 90s with this very like strict Indian Eastern influence, but then trying to be this like Western gal because that's what school wanted me to be. There was a lot of racism. There was a lot of, there was a lot of there were a lot of opportunity. There were a lot of experiences where I didn't feel I belonged. There was a lot of times where I didn't feel accepted, and I carried that with me. And on top of that, I was sadly an individual that experienced sexual abuse as a young child. So there's a lot of trauma, I suppose, in that. But instead of kind of being dragged down by that, I guess I've always made it my mission to ensure that other people don't have to experience the same thing. And so when I moved into sport and I could see some of the, I suppose, the methods that were used and some of the approaches and some of the experience that these athletes were having, I was like, whoa, 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 I don't want to be part of this. This is not what I signed up for. So like when I did so just to give some context, I actually did a biochemistry degree as my first sort of undergrad. And then I moved into clinical dietetics. So I did a further degree in clinical dietetics. And then eventually I did a further degree in applied sports nutrition. So it wasn't just a straight kind of into sports nutrition. It took me, I was qualified as a dietitian for 10 years before I moved into the sports world, should we say. But when I was doing my sports nutrition qualifications, like I had this like ideal that I'm going to get my qualification, I'm going to work with all these amazing athletes, and I'm going to get them to eat well, and it's not going to be full of people um, who were sick, I guess, because I'd spent 10 years working in the National Health Service, working with people that were quite poorly. And, it opens up your eyes. Like there are individuals who physically cannot eat because of their ailments, like they've got gastric surgery or they've got tumors or whatever, and they physically can't eat. But also I was working with people that had severe eating disorders. So, I'd come from this very clinical sort of disease focused area. And I was like, right, I'm going to go and work with healthy people. Little did I know that moving into sport just opened up this can of worms, because it was like, oh my God, this is not what I thought it was going to be. All these athletes that were being sort of, I guess, contained and kind of controlled and encouraged to be a certain way, and not given the autonomy to understand who they were and what their bodies needed. And I was like, oh, I don't know if this is right for me. And I kind of sat in it for several years. Like I went to Rio, I went to London. Yeah, I was very much a part of the performance teams, and yeah, there's quite a lot of excitement in that, but there's also this like sadness, like every time I tried to speak out, there would be, oh no, you shouldn't be saying that. No, let's not talk about that, or we'll worry about that next time, or there was always. And in the end I was like, I don't want to do this. And so that's why I said I started up my consultancy. So I guess it's a very long-winded answer, Haley, sorry, but fundamentally I think it's my passion, in that I just can't, I just deplore suffering. And so I know what it feels like to not have a voice, because for a very long time I was that person. And so I made it my mission to be a voice for people that can't advocate for themselves. And that's what I hope to continue to do.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that part of your story, because that's a lot, right? Like we all have a journey, but how we can use that journey. I love how you highlighted that you could allow parts of your journey to kind of drag you down versus using it as a platform to help others. And that's what you're doing, which is a beautiful thing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, but I
And
will say it wasn't
yeah,
instant, like when you
yes.
experience all this
Mhm.
like it's hard. Like I've done a lot of therapy. So, I
Yeah.
want to put that out there. I don't want people to think, oh, I don't want people to feel like they shouldn't be allowed to experience what they're experiencing, and they should be like advocating for others. I want people to know that this has been like, I'm nearly 50. So this has been a long journey, um and I'm a mum, so I've got two grown up daughters. And I think when you become a mum, your whole attitude changes, and you're responsible, and you have to be some aspect of a role model, right? Like, and yeah, I mean, I never ever set out to be this like, yeah, like this kind of person that people look up to. And even now I feel quite uncomfortable when people put me on a pedestal. I find it quite um yeah, a bit like uncomfortable. But when my daughters say to me, you did a good job, mum,
Yeah.
then I'm happy. Then I know then that makes me feel good.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, and I'm glad, thank you for bringing up that you are a mom, because we do have a lot of listeners who are moms. And I was thinking about this because sometimes when we launch into a topic, right, a person can hear it and be like, oh, I'm not really an athlete, or they don't consider themselves an athlete, right? But we do have a lot of women who are active and or wanting to get their health in order in some way. Some of them are over exercisers, some of them are under exercisers, right? But I think it's really good because I know so many moms, even if they're, they're active or they're working out themselves, but they wouldn't consider themselves an athlete. So many of them, their kids are like, they're hockey moms and their kids are like super into hockey, or they're whatever the different sports are, right? That you're like, I have moms who come to me who their girls play volleyball or whatever it is, and these issues start at a young age. They really do. And I think that there's a lot of parents who don't realize that and they don't know what to do, right? So this information is so important to get in touch with, whether it's for yourself or it's for your kids, or even you are coaching other people. Like I coach one of our gymnastics teams here in our community because my background's in gymnastics. And it's amazing to just see the threads of attitudes and things that come up even within these like 10 to 13-year-olds, right? And those are the things that they can carry on, well, for a lifetime, really.
Yeah. Especially as to like gymnastics is it can be weight influenced too,
Yes.
where it's very like, oh, you have to make this weight and things like that, which is very detrimental for young girls, especially. Like I was one of those young girls, and I went through like eating disorders, and I had REDS and all of that. So I'm very passionate about that as well. And I'm curious, Renee, like what are the specific gaps? You can bucket them into like the biggest three that you saw with the athletes. Like what is lacking in that aspect for like young girls to not go through these sorts of things?
Yeah, again, a really good question. I think if we look at potentially what causes dysfunctional behaviors, if we think about eating disorders, they're a dysfunctional behavior. Exercise dependency is a dysfunctional behavior. Like if we think about what causes that, like often it's the fact that you've got these three aspects. You've got this kind of very type A personality, someone who's very driven, very high achieving, usually quite critical of themselves, possibly because they've come from a background where there has been more focus on seeking approval through attainment, like through achievement. And that, I'm not saying that's intentional, but it happens, and we know that. And so I think these individuals tend to learn how to accept themselves conditionally rather than understanding what unconditional kind of acceptance is. And so you've got this very specific personality type. You put that personality type into this kind of complex psychosocial space. So the kind of competitive environments of sport. Yeah, like regardless of whether it's grassroots or top end, sport is competitive. There's always someone you're going to compare yourself to. There's always someone who's going to be better than you. There's always someone who, if you're the top, is coming up behind you. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a very competitive space. And I think, especially in teenagers, young women, and men, you all grow and mature at different stages. And so that lack of understanding that, your body is going to continually change. I was doing a presentation yesterday to the England National Ballet, because it's one of my sort of areas that I work in. I'm their like nutrition lead. And we were talking about how a lot of these ballet dancers become ballet dancers very, very young. Like they go to ballet school and then they go to a company and then they try and move up the ladder. And often when they're chosen for the company, they're still quite young. So some of them will still have relatively underdeveloped bodies, and then they get into like their 20s, and naturally their body starts to change, right? That's a very normal response, and it's not one we should be trying to contain. It's a very, very normal response. And I'm not talking about, becoming overweight. I'm just talking about the fact that we know as a female, when she goes through puberty, the stats suggest that, prepubescent, probably like 8% body fat. And then as you move through into becoming an adult, the minimum kind of acceptable is around 21% to be fertile. Like, we know that. Yeah. But if you're in sport, that's quite complicated because they're not the images we see. There's not the culture. There's a lot of influence. And if you're growing up and you want to be the best because that's how you attain your worth, then you start to become affected by that. And then we can't avoid the social, societal ideals. They're just a constant pressure and a constant source of, problem, aren't they? They're just problematic, full stop. I mean, I don't really have any other word for it. I wish I did have a more kind of dynamic word, but I don't. It's just problematic. These social ideals that we see that are constantly changing. And so yeah, you put this individual into this psychosocial space. You don't give them any support. You don't help them to understand their personality types. You don't help them to understand that their bodies are going to change. It's part of normality. You don't help them to explain that these images you keep seeing on social media are not realistic, and they're not going to make you happy. Of course, you're going to end up with dysfunctional behaviors. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to change the narrative. We have to change. We have to educate, at that young age. I'm not saying it doesn't affect older people, because we know it does, but I think you're absolutely right, Hayley. It starts, and I think, Emma, you said the same thing. It starts young, and we have to change that narrative. We have to somehow, and we've got to stop encouraging. And I still think it's more of a female problem, although I'm very, very aware. I work with a lot of male athletes that also have real issues with RED-S, but I do feel like female athletes are still encouraged to contain themselves in the smallest possible body. And I think that comes from the patriarchy, right? Like, let's keep women really small because then they're not problematic. They can't shout at us. They can't tell us anything. They can just stay small and quiet, because if we don't feed them, if we keep them small, they won't have the energy to be sort of noisy. And I think that's still a massive, massive issue. And we're miles away from changing that.
Yeah. So I just for clarification, because I messed this up. It turns out I've never asked anyone I know the acronym is for energy deficiency, relative energy deficiency, right? I always thought it was like, you said it like an acronym, RED, like, you know what I mean? But you guys have been saying the word RED, so I never asked anyone. I screw up words like that all the time, right, Hayley? I do it so I can make other people feel good about themselves. And my relatives who are like, aren't you a doctor? Happens all the time. Speaking of, not knowing all the details. But so with RED-S, can you explain a little bit more about what it is for people? Because you guys are saying it, obviously, like, very familiar with the terminology. But even myself, like, I know what it I knew what it stood for, but can you give us some more detail?
Yeah, of course. So RED-S, as we said, is relative energy deficiency in sport. That's the acronym for it. You can call it REDS. It's not a problem. It's
okay.
Some people call it RED-S. Some people call it RED-S. Like,
okay.
It's however.
Thank you.
It's no issue. I think the key thing is understanding that what is happening is that individual has not got enough energy in their body relative to what they're asking their body to do. And I say that like that because what I don't want is people to think it's just about energy as in food consumption. Okay. Because although RED-S is underpinned by low energy availability, which is like not fueling enough, it's also highly influenced by not resting enough. So, you know, thinking about gymnasts, thinking about ballet dancers, like they start very young, their hours and volume goes up very, very quickly. Like that's potentially a problem. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
potentially an issue because that lack of rest is quite key. And so what happens is when there's not enough energy relative to what we're asking, then the body will always prioritize energy for movement first. And when there's not enough energy left over, then it starts to down regulate other processes in the body that it doesn't deem really very necessary in that moment. So, for example, the reproductive system gets shut down quite early on because it's like, well, if there's not enough energy here, if it's not enough, this is not a very safe place to have a baby. It's not a very safe place to fall pregnant. So it just shuts it down. But also, you can have other symptoms like there's not enough repair going on. So, you know, you get recurrent injuries, and that could be like bone stress injuries, especially if reproductive health is affected. Then that means those low levels of androgens, those low levels of testosterone and estrogen, will start to have a negative effect on bone health. And this is obviously really, really worrying when you've got a young individual because their peak bone mass is really between the ages of probably around 9 and 20. So if you end up with a gap during that time where your menstrual cycle is either delayed or affected because of not fueling well, not resting well, then of course that it has an implication to how whether you can reach your peak bone density. And so that will then potentially contribute to an increased risk of bone stress injuries. And even if you do have a regular menstrual cycle and then it stops, depending on how long it stops for, again, will start to have a negative implication to your bone density. So it's a concern. But you know, other areas that can be affected are your digestive system. So we know that if you don't have enough energy in your body, then your body can't digest food, and food becomes very like it starts to move through the gut very, very slowly. And you can get these symptoms that feel like irritable bowel syndrome because they like you get that bloating and discomfort and but actually it's not. It's a condition called gastroparesis when the food is just moving very, very slowly through the gut. You can get autoimmune conditions. Fundamentally, there is not a single system in the body that is not potentially affected by REDS, but how it presents is very different from individual to individual. So some people might only present with one symptom, perhaps it is the menstrual cycle. Other people might present with several different features, right? So they might have a load of injuries and an autoimmune condition, like maybe something very often the most common one I see at the moment is that kind of the very chronic fatigue, you know, sort of like the virus, the virus that is usually associated with having mono, like that seems to be a very common presentation. So it can present in many different ways, and it also starts to affect your performance because obviously your body can't adapt, it can't improve, it can't get stronger. And so then that then also becomes a concern because you're not reaching your potential, but you don't always know why. You know, the thing about REDS is it's not always visible, because I think a lot of people think, well, if I'm not eating enough, surely I'll lose weight. But you're not always going to lose weight when you have REDS. You can actually be a normal weight and still have REDS. And I think that's what confuses people so much. And the reason you can have a normal weight is because, again, the body basically starts to downregulate. It switches everything off, including your metabolism, because it's trying to preserve energy. It's trying to keep you safe. That's what it's trying to do. But at some point, it will go, I can't do this anymore. Right. And that's
Yeah.
when people tend to turn up in our clinic.
Yeah, I imagine you have to spend some time in LEA, so like low energy availability, in order to get to the extreme more version, which is REDS, right?
Yeah, I mean, the exact time frame is unknown, and I think
Yeah.
actually it depends on so many different factors. Like you might be in LEA only for 6 months. But if during that 6 months you've also done extreme exercise with very little rest, then you probably exacerbate the condition. Or you could be somebody that is in chronic LEA for 18 months and then your body goes. And it does also depend on where your body starts in the first place as well. You know, I've got an athlete at the moment who I have been working with now for a year. And when she first presented to the sport that she was in, she was a really strong athlete. Like, she came from a CrossFit kind of strength-based background, and she went into this endurance sport. And for the first 18 months, she was winning everything and she was like smashing it. And in her head, it was because as she was training harder and harder, her body comp and her body weight were dropping. But it was because obviously she'd come from this very strong muscular background that her body was able to sustain that. But it got to 18 months in and then her body couldn't sustain it. And then she would end up with broken bones. And then she just got to a point where she genuinely had nothing in the tank, like nothing. And so over the last year, we've been working very, very closely together. And you know, she's slowly getting back to where she needs to be. But she really struggles with believing that the only reason she was good previously was because of her previous kind of strength that she had for so many years. And so again, it does depend on like how much resilience and robustness you have in your body before as well. And that's the other thing. If you've already had RED-S once, the likelihood, if you're not careful, if you go back to your behaviors, your body's highly sensitive, and it potentially could end up being, you know, going back into RED-S relatively quickly.
Wow. Okay, so it's so interesting because just to kind of circle back a little bit to saying how young this starts to occur and how most people, I don't think, know what's going on with it, right? And so when I think back to my gymnastics career, because I did compete at a world level, and it's intense. Like, you are training like 4 hours a day every day. And it's like, oh, it's supposed to be your rest day, so you're not in the gymnastics club. But you know what? I'm just going to go for a run, like, you know, an 18-kilometer run. Like, I do ridiculous things like that back then. And thinking about it and going, well, I didn't know why, but I had times where I would be on the balance beam and I would faint, like literally faint and fall off. I had times where I did the like full month of mono, like you said, in grade 11. When we hit university, and that's when I was competing, like, you know, in different places, you know, where all over the world. It was literally the time that we could get in the gym in the city we were training in. Was our training time was 9 till midnight, because all the younger, you know, smaller kid classes are during the day. And so we would train from 9 till midnight. You get home, you'd still be like awake. You'd be up till 2 a.m, you know, eat something, finish your studies, go to bed, wake up, be up at, you know, 7 a.m, like such little sleep. And it's interesting because a lot of the symptoms and the things that you're talking about, I definitely had, but it was all like push through, push through, push through. And by my last I competed at the world level I was on Team Canada for 5 years. And by my last competition in Germany, my last Worlds, after it, I could barely walk. Like, I used to have to like turn my right foot outward. If I was just going for a walk that was like not even that long after that competition, I totally overtrained that year. I was like hobbling, like I was like an old person. And it's so interesting because, you know, I think about the athletes I'm working with now, who it's just like a fun rec level. They do some competitions, but it's supposed to be fun. And it's this weird dichotomy in my brain of knowing what it takes to be the best, like you said, which means someone is on your form at every single moment. They're correcting you, right? Or it's like, how about we just have fun? How about we just learn how to be active and fit? And so there's a part of me that's like, guys, I don't even want you to be the best, because when you're the best, it actually kind of sucks in a lot of ways. Like, I used to come back and be in my university residence room practicing the same skill like 1,000 times. Yeah, at night. It's
Mm.
crazy. Like, it's actually crazy when you think about it.
It is, and I think it's really important to educate kids on appreciating that actually the majority of people who participate in sport are not going to be winners.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually that's kind of cool.
Amen.
Um,
Amen.
I think if you put this pressure on a child to be the best, to be the winner, like you're asking for big problems later on. And I see it all the time. You know, these individuals that come into my clinic who I find, particularly in running, obviously running is my sport. It's what I race a lot and stuff. I say race, I race once a year. I don't race a lot, but I race.
Good
And
job, though.
but I guess like I do find I mean, I love running. I love running for what it gives me. I live in the northwest of the UK, in like near the Lake District, so I have these beautiful, beautiful hills and fells and mountains that I can spend time in, and I love how they ground me and they make me feel like me. But I don't run to compete as such. Like I guess I'm a little
Mm.
bit competitive against myself sometimes, but I don't run to compete. I don't run to win ever. um, but I find running as a sport quite problematic,
Yeah.
and hence why I wrote the book Fuel for Thought. Although it is kind of the focus is running. It's not for, it could be for any sport, but I focused it on running because I find running quite a problematic sport, particularly in young people, right? In the sense that often you get particularly, and it's saying again, boys and girls, but I want to just highlight with the girls here that girls, when they're prepubescent, they will they'll be similar to boys. So in terms of competing, you're going to get the same sorts of outcome, right? Same sorts of speed, same sort of outcome. As soon as girls go through puberty, as we've discussed, like their bodies change, they get a little bit more body fat, which is completely normal and completely necessary. But we also know that there is a bit of a lag in their body catching up with this change. And so actually we'll often see a little dip in their performance. And that's usually the time when they start to panic, because they're like, oh, I'm not as fast as I used to be, or I'm not as good as I was, and I'm not beating that same person. And so that's when some of these dysfunctional behaviors can kick in. If I lose a few kilos, I'll be faster, or whatever. But the issue is that some of the issue is some of the coaching around these ages, right? Where from a young age you're being told, good job, you're going to be the next such and such. You're like our next, like I hate it when schools go, this is going to be our next bright star. And it's like, how do you know? They're 12 years old. How do you know?
Yeah.
Like I was never told I was
Oh,
good at running ever. But you know what? I'm not bad, but I'm a fully grown adult, and actually if I had held on to that, I wouldn't have even given run another chance, but I did, because it was something that I knew could give me joy. So I think it's really important, like the messaging we give young people. Sport, absolutely, as you said, Emma, sport should be about participation. It should be about fun. It should be about exploration, understanding our bodies. What can our bodies do? What shapes can they make? How do they feel? Like, it should be about that full embodiment. It shouldn't be about, okay, you need to be able to execute that, or you need to be, you know, turning up to track and doing ridiculous amounts of training, because it it doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't make you a better person. And I think that's like my thing, is if we start too young, we end up encouraging young people to believe that their worth is tied up in their performance and their ability. And children should be loved for what is seen, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so important.
yes.
For
And the
sure.
highlight, I love what you said. And then also the highlighting of the functionality within sports, where you're like, I love, like, I know I keep coming back to gymnastics. Obviously, it's my familiar place, but it is like, I love that you learn how to fall in any way. Like gymnasts don't injure themselves often from a fall because we know you learn how to fall really well to not injure yourself. So that would be something that I'm like, everyone should learn this. This is a great skill. You're less likely to break a bone if you lose your balance, right? And so I think that of any sport, it's like, what is the function that it provides you that can actually apply to real life? What is the feeling that it gives you in your mind and your body? And this is all things that you just spoke to that I completely agree. Like, how do we highlight this more for people? And how do we teach more freedom and trust within our bodies?
Yeah.
It's a
Like
billion
that
dollar question,
intuitive.
right?
Yeah. Like, how do we do that? Tell us how to do that, Renee.
Yes.
No pressure.
I really wish I had the answers. I really, really, really wish I had that answer. I think it's so complicated because if we take a step back and just look at humans completely as like just as an object, we know that humans are complex creatures. And, you know, we, all our behaviors, whatever behavior we have, there'll be a purpose behind our behavior. And generally speaking, that purpose will be some aspect of protection, protection from threat, protection from discomfort. So so I find like the difficulty is that, you know, when you've got young people, they are inheriting kind of potential generational traumas, generational experiences, um, and we don't teach children how to understand their emotions. We don't teach children that it's actually okay to feel angry or to feel sad. It's okay to have these experiences. It's also okay to realize that they don't feel very good. Yeah, like we we tend to avoid unpleasant sensations and we tend to lean towards pleasant sensations. And so that's what we teach our kids. And so that's why it keeps on going. So if we want to change things, we have to fundamentally, I think, change the school structure. We have to stop putting so much focus on the maths and the English, and we have to we
Dog's
have to,
excited.
yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
Someone at the door, so it's all right. My partner will get the door. He's it's very noisy vocal, my dog.
That's okay.
He's just agreeing with me. But yeah, we have to we have to change the fundamentals, and I feel like that's such a big ask. You know, like we're talking about changing the curriculum. We're talking about I don't know, just societally being different. And I don't know how you achieve that. I all I can do is continue to do what I do, which is, you know, be be on podcasts like this, and hope that these messages get spread. And similarly, like write books, and you know that's all I can do, and advocate, and just keep trying to get the message through, and hope that, you know, one person who listens to this podcast takes on board what I'm saying and doesn't go down that path of trying to attain worth through achievement. Like that's, I think, all I can ask for, and hope that other people are doing what I'm doing, and maybe again there'll be this kind of ripple effect, and we'll change it from that point of view. But I feel like trying it's going to take so much work to change where we're at, that I don't know. And I think with social media, like somebody asked me this morning, what do we need to do? So there's been a ban on the hashtag skinny talk. I didn't even know what it was. I have to admit, I had to look it up.
It's like pro, do you remember pro Anna
Mm,
Tumblr? It's that. Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, because I don't do TikTok. I am too old for TikTok. It is not my realm at all. Um, I dread to think what's on there. But anyway, so I was asked by a journalist about this. So I had to look it up because I was like, I don't know. But I kind of picked up on what it was. And one of the questions she asked me was, what can we do? I'm like, I mean, we need regulation, right? When it comes to things like social media, we need proper regulation. We need, we need it to stop. I mean, in the real world, we just need to stop it all. But the problem is, if we stop it, then there'll be another new platform. And let's face it, like there are people earning a lot of money from these platforms, so they're not gonna shut them down, are they? And that's the problem. If you think about the different industries involved here. You've got the diet industry that's been going on forever. You've got the fitness industry. You've now got the wellness industry. You've got the pharmaceutical industry. You've got all these industries, and they all want to profit from us. And so, what do they have to do to profit from us? They have to continually tell us that there's a problem with us. They have to cultivate self hatred, because that's the only way we're going to spend money believing and chasing what they can offer us. And so until someone puts some regulation in place, until someone starts going, there's a problem there, it's never gonna change. And I guess all we can do is try and open people's eyes and get them to realize that they're all being duped. They're all
Yeah.
being, they're all being duped. None of these industries work. If the diet industry worked, we wouldn't have a diet industry.
Yep.
100%. Mic drop.
That's a great end.
Oh, wow. Well, this has been absolutely amazing, and we're coming to the end of our time now that we're available, and I'm so thankful that you were able to be on, Renee. Is there any final words you want to end off on before we say goodbye?
Oh my goodness. No, I feel like we've covered quite a lot in a very short period of time. So I'm very grateful again for you having me. Apologies for my very noisy dog. And hopefully you can block him out somehow. But yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you both. And thank you for also championing the book. Like that means a lot to me. Like I said, having my book being read stateside is pretty cool. It's not something I thought would happen. So I feel very, very privileged and very honored. So thank you.
Yeah. It's cool too, because like I have my own clients, so I can then pass down all of the messaging that I've learned from you and your book and your work. So definitely is rippling over to the our side of the pond, which is cool.
It's really
Yeah.
cool. And that actually probably has made my day, you saying that. So thank you.
Good.
Amazing. Make sure you guys check out Renee's book, and we will have details in the caption or in the description of this. Share this episode with a friend because it's going to help so many people, and we need you to be able to do that. We need you to share the show. Make sure you rate it, review it, click the subscribe button, and in the meantime, be free, feel fresh, and live on fire.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Renee. I appreciate you so much. I have to pop off, so have the best day of your entire life. And
Thank you. And yeah,
Bye,
have
Ellie.
a great proposal. Like I
Yes.
need to hear.
Oh
Like,
my god. I know. It's gonna be I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see you later. Thanks again, Renee.
thanks so much. Take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.